Okay, so we've already talked about um, a lot of the individual response, mass media, books, movies, and music. And one of the things that we were just talking about was the movie Parasite, and how Parasite actually bridged the gap between some other societal mores. Um, I think we need to spend some time talking about how literature does the same thing, and then, of course, how music does the same thing. What kind of music do you listen to?
Like,
Like everything?
yeah, like a little bit of everything.
Okay, what's your one thing that's like, no matter what your mood is, you can turn to this and
Probably hip hop, and I'll probably say under that, like the artist, I'll say Post Malone.
Post Malone. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. So you don't really listen to any like international music.
international, nah.
Okay,
People try to get me into K-pop, but I'm like, nah.
okay. You ever heard of this guy by the name of Rag and Bone Man?
Yeah, I've heard that name.
Okay, you familiar with his music at all?
Wait,
Like this big dude with tattoos.
yeah, he made Human.
Yeah,
I'm only human after all. Something, something, something.
yeah. It's a good song.
Yeah.
Um, you know, have any idea about his background?
Mm-mm.
So you know he's British.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
He sounds like
a
kind of
dude
like
from Philly.
yeah,
Right, but because of the way that we export our culture through our media, sometimes when we get it back, we get a reflection of who we are. So an artist like P Square or like 21 Savage or like um, Rag and Bone Man will give us back our own culture in lots of ways and typically be well regarded as a result of doing it effectively. A couple generations ago, Amy Winehouse was huge.
yeah,
Of course, everybody knew she was British, but the types of songs she sang were American jazz standards or American blues standards, and a rebirth of that type of music. When we do it, of course, it's done well. And when they do it, if they do it well enough, then it's seen as almost Americanized. And I think many of the fans of Rag and Bone Man don't realize he became popular primarily because of French rap. Yeah, that's the hard story. I mean, he was always a good singer and always a good artist, but he got put on rap stations in France because of his vocals. And of course, he would do collaborations with some French rappers. There's a huge French rap scene.
yeah. I've seen on Twitter like there's like French rap, French freestyle rap clips. It's kind of funny, but
Yeah.
I don't even know what they're saying. But it just sounds cool.
Yeah, the same thing, and I guess there's a brand new genre of like trap music from London.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like Stormzy. Stormzy's kind of a part of that, but
yeah,
like, he's like the king of it, whereas like everybody else is like under him, and it's like yeah, you just see like random clips pop up everywhere. Same thing with like in Japan. Japan's the same way.
yeah,
It's like you don't even know what they're saying, but like you just catch on to like two words of like a chorus, and then it's like it just clicks in your head. It's like so clingy, and you just can't stop saying it.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is that in other cultures, the other countries, they've taken this concept of this individualized mass media response, and they attempt to manipulate it. There was a cause in China where they were trying to get people to believe in the government, so they hired rappers, Chinese rappers, to rap in Chinese about how good the government is in order to and they were like hiring them to do rap battles and stuff like that. So It was like you have like a real rapper, and you have another real rapper, but this real rapper works for the government. So Xi Jinping is the man in a rap battle. That's part of the way that we export music, and we know how we export movies. And we were just talking about Parasite and how well Parasite was received in the States. And part of that is because we were able to see ourselves, and that even though there's a very strict caste system in that film, I don't know, do you remember the pizza box girl?
Yeah.
So she was like one strata above the family. And the family was destitute. And I don't know if you caught this part. The mother in the family was like an Olympic shot putter.
Yeah, she had a medal in her picture of like her doing it, yeah.
Or hammer throw. Yeah, but yeah, so there was that. So as a former Olympian, this is how far one can fall. And then the possibility of climbing to the upper echelon, where when the family was on vacation for their camping thing, these people at the bottom strata were able to stay in their house for a day, but still live like they were the uber wealthy in this small community. And then there are several groups below them. So what I didn't quite understand is, if there is this common smell for that strata, that caste of people, how come the driver of the car didn't recognize that with the girl when he was trying to come at her? So when she was in the car and he was giving her a ride back to the train station, how come he didn't say, this ain't quite what I would expect from a well-regarded teacher?
Yeah.
She got the smell of homelessness on her.
I think it's probably because he's a young kid. Like what they said, like he's a young guy, good physique and all that. I think it's because he was probably like, he wasn't like uber up there. He was probably like a regular middle class guy, but he just works for a rich family, so he's just getting paid a lot. So I think that's why. And plus, I think he just kind of liked her. That's why he kept egging her on to like take her home.
Yeah, but see, he's still from a different strata. He's not from her caste. He's from a caste above that, and still she would be a lower caste for him. So he should be able to recognize that she's not middle class. She's pretending to be middle class, but she ain't really middle class. And maybe he did. Maybe that's why he was saying, well, let me just take you to your house. This is where you really live.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a correlation between the way that our movies are presented? Have you seen an American movie recently?
Besides Birds of Prey.
Okay, I didn't see Birds of Prey, so you have to explain it to me.
It's like Harley Quinn. She recently broke up with the Joker, and she's like trying to like do all these like crazy things just to like let everybody know, hey, I'm not with the Joker anymore. And then when people figure that out, that like they're not together anymore, everybody wants to kill her because like Joker was like the head boss man.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have protection anymore, so all these people try to come after her, and she finds like these bands of girls that are also trying to be assassinated by the same people, and they all come together and they have to like kill everybody basically.
Oh, okay. So she becomes the Joker.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. What's the meaning?
Oh, it's from like a comic book.
I mean, I get that part, but what's like the overall societal meaning of this whole little?
Like I don't know. It's probably I don't know. Just like I think.
Well, part of it is girl power.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Probably that's probably the only big thing about it.
And part of it is like cheering for the underdog because she's not the Joker.
Yeah.
So not yet. So you want to cheer for the person who has potential but isn't quite there.
Yeah.
So it tells that story. But beyond that, I don't know. I mean, is it just that simple?
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
So what's the appeal of the movie? Because you saw it. So.
I think it's just because it's Harley Quinn. She's been lately on the rise because of Margot Robbie, like how she portrays her, and like there's like other stuff like her comic books and like her being in video games and stuff like that. People kind of like Harley Quinn.
Oh, okay. So it really is just the character
Yeah, basically.
or the personality that attracts people. So I can see some serious correlations with that and more emerging media like podcasting or social media, where personality carries the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what the story is as long as it's carried by the right personality. So I went and saw Romance this weekend. Don't tell anybody. I saw the photograph.
I saw it. I saw a little teaser on
On
Twitter.
Harley Quinn?
Huh?
Oh, well, on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's like when you scroll, there's like promoted tweets or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a promoted tweet.
Yeah.
Why did you get that?
I don't know. Well, usually like people retweet stuff, so then it's like it would just pop up. Like there was like so I saw a photograph, like little 30-second teaser, and then Antlers. It's like a horror movie that's set in the woods, and it doesn't come out till like April. But like I have like people retweet like horror, like nostalgic horror clips or whatever. So it's like, yeah.
What's on your feed that has people sending you movies?
Oh, I follow like movie directors and like movie studios like Paramount, Marvel, like them.
Okay, we'll talk about that later on. But there's a direct correlation there in the movies and in the movies that you receive in your feed. I don't get movies in my feed because I just don't follow anybody like that. But maybe I'll start. Maybe I'll start getting movies. But as I'm watching the photograph, one of the things that really attracted me to the movie itself was the score and the soundscape. So the music they were playing in the background and the music they purposely played. And there's a whole scene with an Al Green album. And I own the album, so that scene was attractive to me because I like listening to vinyl, and Al Green is one of my people, and it's my era. And the movie looks at this correlation between the way that this woman acted and the way that her daughter is, and trying to break this cycle of bad behavior. And I found out before I saw the movie that you were in one or two camps. Nobody is neutral about this movie. Some people are like, that movie is shit, and other people are like, that movie is the shit. And you're in one camp or the other camp. So I'm in, that movie was really good because it's all about human relationships. And other people were like, there's no action in the movie, it's slow moving, nothing ever happens, and it's just sappy. Well, some of us are looking for sappy. And it gave us the sappy we were looking for because it seemed for me that there were these layers. Yeah. Like there's this idea that people have the need to feel wanted and connected. And initially our family gives us that idea. And once we lose that bond, then we're looking for something to rejoin that bond. Yeah. And some people will do it like with a quick marriage. So my girlfriend dumped me. I wanted to be married and she didn't. I'm gonna find somebody who wants to be married. And if this one wants to be married, I want to be married, we're making this happen. So there was like a thing where the woman dumped a guy and she came back 3 months later and was like, I just want to see how he's doing. And her friend says, oh, boo, he got married. In 3 months? What the fuck? This happened to me. I was checking on this woman that didn't work out with, just to see how she was. And her friend was saying, oh, she got married. She's so happy. And I was like, dang. I mean, it was like 6 months. I mean, how'd she get married? Oh, she must have been cheating. No. She was one of those people who needed that connection. And once she found somebody else who needed that connection, it just made perfect sense. So she lost the family and created a new family. And from what I understand, she's very happily married for like 30 years. Or 20 years. But still a long time. Yeah. And the other thing with the movie was when it says when that family breaks up, the subtext, it's difficult for some people to make that connection, or it's really people suffer from a fear of making another type connection because of the fear of losing it.
Yeah.
So if I grew up with my single mom and I lost my single mom, I can't go through that loss again. So I just can't have that kind of connection with anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna be by myself. I'm gonna be in like distant relationships in the same proximity. And that's just gonna be me.
Mhm.
So, but if you're that person, do you raise your kids to be that person? And that's the bigger challenge. How do you raise your children to either fight against your issues or to be part of your issues or to have issues all their own that are similar to your issues? So here's my question for you. What relationship issues do you get from your parents?
Like, what do you mean? Like,
Okay, so our parents teach us everything, virtually everything about
yeah.
everything, particularly relationships. So if we come from a broken home, we see marriage is hard.
Yeah.
If we come from a connected home, we see marriage as like a linchpin. So what issues did your parents give you?
I'll probably say like probably that need of like connecting with people, but then like that same fear of like losing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'll admit, like I don't have a mom. Like I've never met my mom.
Okay.
So it's like that thing in the back of your head is like, who is she? But like, would I even want to connect with her? Do I want to connect with her? But then it's like, do I want to build something with somebody else for them to just up and leave?
Ah, okay.
Whereas like as a kid, yeah, you're like attached to your parents.
Right.
But like I didn't like grow up. Like people grow up with a mom and then their mom like dies or they leave. Whereas like they built that connection for so many years.
Right.
Whereas like a kid, like a toddler, you're like, oh, mommy, that food or whatever.
Right.
So that's my only connection. So it's like, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I think what the movie does is it shows all of those complexities to everyone. It shows people that I always told my kids the requirement to be a parent is simply too stupid to use a condom. That's it. So don't look at your parents as like some great superhero. They were the ones who were just too stupid to use a condom. And here you are, regular people. So we have to look at our parents as regular people who are in some cases fallible and in some cases perfect. And in some cases just perfect for us and nobody else.
Yeah.
And I think what the movie does is it shows the main character that your mom is the way she is because of who her mom was and what she learned from that experience to make her who she was. And she wanted you to have something different, so she created this world that was slightly different from her world, but she had to take herself with it, which sort of shaded that world. I thought it was really complex with the humanity of it. I don't know what these other folks who just didn't like it were saying. Maybe they're looking for Harley Quinn. There was no action. There were no guns. There's no violence. Yeah. Just like a regular slice of life type movie. The problem with that is those movies don't get the huge audiences. So what they have to do is they have to pull on their cast. So they're pulling on having the right personality be the person to push the film. So Issa Rae is the star of the film. And I don't even know that dude's name, the actor who played Darius on Atlanta, and he was also in Get Out, and he's been everywhere. So these two characters have been everywhere. So they're in this movie. The two actors have been everywhere, and they're in this movie. So that sort of pushes the people to go to see the film because you got to see Issa Rae.
Yeah.
You got to see Darius. Because we like them as actors. We would like them in this film, or at least give it a shot. The movies that win at the box office are the movies that show the themes that we appreciate. The only problem with that is if you're not that familiar with our culture, it doesn't seem so foreign to American life. I'm trying to think of like a Tyler Perry movie And some people think that the Tyler Perry movie is just like the modern day equivalent of a minstrel show. We're showing things about the black community that should stay in the black community. We don't use the N word and if we're hanging out at the Asian restaurant because that's not for them. It's just for us. And the Tyler Perry is like just for our stories. You don't be sharing this with everybody. So he's sharing all of that coonery with the world. And of course that sells tickets. But some of us are saying we don't want them to see that part of us. Yeah. We want them to see the Huxtables and only the Huxtables. Because the moment somebody else does that, I don't know, like Tarantino in Django Unchained, then we're like, hold on a minute. I mean, he ain't Tyler Perry. He can't be showing that part of us. Yeah. Because then it becomes mockery. In the outside world, they don't know about these nuances. They don't know that Tyler Perry is part of the community, so he can, and Quentin Tarantino is not part of the community, so he can't. And that makes it difficult because we're still reflected in the eyes of people whose only experience of us is through film and movies, not even books. Just because we don't write enough books. So if our only experience for a culture, let's say a Korean culture, is through the movie Parasite, there are certain things we can latch on to that we think are normal, but people within the community see this as really nuanced. Even though they see it as a good movie, they see it as much more of a cartoon, much more of a Birds of Prey than the photograph. Yeah. So we lose some of the nuance when we export our culture in the way that we export our culture through the individual response. So that's all old media, books, movies, music, individual response, old media. But each one of those has a new media component. How many streaming services are there now? Like millions. Yeah. It used to be, if you were doing a streaming service, it was Netflix, period. Yeah. Then it was Netflix and Amazon, period.
And Hulu.
And then it was Netflix, Amazon, Hulu. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Disney, and all the others that are doing their own streaming services. And I don't know what's going to happen to companies like Netflix. Are they going to lose their brand when they start to lose some of the programming that they've already lost from Disney, from NBC, from ABC, and from other sources? With Disney combining with Fox and was it Turner that combined with Time Warner?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So it's just these big, humongous producers of content that have their own streaming services that they no longer rely on Netflix to handle. And here's the shocking thing, or the surprising thing. Netflix, Disney, Hulu, there's another one. There's another big one, and I can't remember the name of it. All of them use the technology and rent the space from Amazon, which is also, Amazon owns Prime. So Prime Video, Hulu, Netflix, all of them are on the same sort of platform, and all of them pay Jeff Bezos for the streaming services. So now Netflix is creating their own content. They hired Shonda Rhimes and paid her a ton of money to produce content. They're hiring other producers to pay them a ton of money to produce content so that they're no longer left out in the cold because they are producing their own content. One of the things they did was they produced this movie called Wheelman. I don't know if you saw it on Netflix.
I've seen it when scrolling by. It's like top choices for you. So then it's like
okay.
Yeah.
So they thought that movie specifically was a good choice for you because you enjoy movies. And some of the cinematography in the movie is really good. And it will never be on the big screen because it was produced for Netflix. And more importantly, The Irishman is the latest one that was nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. It's a Netflix movie. never gone to the big screen. So they're creating a new niche within streaming that may impact our old traditional media like the movie houses, Time Warner and Fox. We'll see. And if they're successful at it, everybody else will follow suit. I wonder, is Disney going to stop producing movies for the big screen and start producing movies for the stream?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, they have to. It's a much smaller budget and a much bigger impact.
Yeah,
And if you're doing it on the stream, do you have the worldwide impact that you had before?
I think so.
Who's going to pick up Nollywood? Who's going to pick up all those Nigerian films? Where are we going to see those? Who's going to pick up Bollywood? Where are we going to see all these Indian films? Who's going to pick up the movies from New Zealand and Australia, where the culture is unique to that area? Portuguese movies, Jamaican movies. Do we lose all of that because we're starting to go with this streaming thing where we have to curate our experience to such a degree that we don't see anything outside of our choices in the same way that we interact with our social media? That's the question. What does this technology give us, and what do we lose in accepting the gift? So, that's film. You read a book.
Yeah.
What'd you read? The Harry Potter book.
Half-Blood Prince.
Or did you finish it?
I didn't finish it.
Oh, what happened?
I got busy during the week.
Okay. So wait. Just so I'm clear, when you got busy during the week, did you get busy where you just weren't able to get back to it because you never had time, or it just didn't compel you enough to get back to it?
The first one, it was like just stuff kept piling over on top of each other,
Yeah.
and it's just like you barely find the time. And like I think I have time at night. I just start reading and I fall asleep, and I'm like, oh god. And
Right.
yeah, so
Okay, so let me ask you this real question: was the book just not that good?
no, it was good for like me who doesn't like books often. It kind of like made me like it like makes you like look at the small details.
Right.
Then when you do go back to the movie, whenever you be like, oh, that's from so and so chapter or whatever.
Right. So as I'm reading my book, I had a week like yours, and my Friday I got here late, and when I got here, there were two different people waiting for me. One of them for a 3-hour meeting, and one of them for a 1-hour meeting. And they were both waiting at the same time, and that was the start of my day. So the meeting that I had in 2 hours after I got here, I completely missed because I never had a chance to go back to it. When I finally left here at 6:30 on a Friday, when I have no classes, I was exhausted and pissed because half the time I was thinking, I really just want to read my book. I really just want all you people to go away. I don't want to do anything other than just read my book. So I went to Audible and got my book on Audible. Okay, so I'm already 2 degrees from reading. So it's not just reading the book, and I do own the paper. So I also have the book on my Kindle. It's in my Kindle library. If I don't have the paper, I've got my iPad. If I don't have my iPad, I got my phone.
Yeah.
But I have an hour and a half commute. So my hour and a half commute, I can either listen to podcasts, I can listen to radio, I can listen to my book. So I started listening to my book. Fast forwarded to the 8th chapter, which that's the chapter I was on. I started listening to the book. At the end of my drive, I sat in my car for 20 minutes. Because I looked, and on Audible it said the chapter ends in 18 minutes. Well, I could go in the house and start cooking, or I can just finish listening. So I finished listening to the chapter, and then the next chapter started. And it was so good that I forgot I was going in the house to start cooking. Because that was my experience with the book. It's a really good book. It's called The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And as I'm listening to the book, I know which page I'm on, so I can go back and read it when I want to read it, and I get a different experience with it. But all of it is really just good literature that I could not find in a movie. Now, I'm sure at some point that they're going to turn this into a movie.
Probably.
But is it going to be a stream movie or a real movie? Big screen or small screen? Who knows? So when we look at old media to the emerging media, music is streaming. Movies are streaming. Books are both digital and audio. And that's the emerging part of each of those because it's all of it is internet based.
Yeah.
And now we're going to switch from all the individual mass media to the advertising based mass media. And we're going to spend time on newspapers, radio, and television. And we'll go over the history of newspapers, radio, and television, and then we'll go over the connection between the old and the emerging or the new for those three. Then we'll move on to just strictly digitally based media. Any questions?
I saw that there was a it was a grade not grade. It was like a
An assignment?
yeah music discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, you already did that.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
I'm going to tell you about my lifestyle. Because we're from a different generation, clearly. Could I ask how old you are?
20.
Okay. So you came out of high school in 18 or 19?
17.
17. You graduated young. You were like 17 when you graduated.
Yeah.
Okay. What school?
St. Vincent Pallotti in Laurel.
Okay. Private school.
Yeah.
Good school?
Yeah, it was decent.
Okay. What made it decent?
I mean, like it wasn't like other schools that I was hearing about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In comparison, it was a good school. It's safe anyway.
Yeah.
And you feel like you got a good education there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you don't have to throw shade. That's fine. I graduated from a school just outside Detroit, right near the Detroit International Airport, Romulus High School. Back in the 70s and 80s, Romulus was known for having a horrible football team and a great basketball team. The year after I graduated, two of the people who were on the basketball team two of the people who were on that team that year played in the NBA for more than 10 years. Two of the people on the same team. Secret, neither of them was the best player on that team. Dead serious. There's another guy who was a better player than either of them. But they worked really hard to be good basketball players, and they've been a reputation for Romulus for playing basketball. And in 1 year, 6 of the starting 5 got Division I scholarships. So they went to like top 50 schools. 6 of them, full rise. They were that good. It was almost unheard of that like a sophomore would get a starting position. Yeah. I was not that guy. But that was what our school was like. But it was an environment where there were no cell phones. There were very few, if any, personal computers. And people spent their community time talking about what was on TV. Because that's just the way we live. You go to school. If you had a job, you would go to your job. You spend some time on your homework sometimes. And then you would watch TV and talk about it to your friends. In some cases, you were actually on the phone watching TV, talking about the show while it was going on. If you were lucky enough to have your own phone.
Yeah.
Because it was one house phone, and it might have had call waiting, but it was one house phone. And if your mother's people called, you had to hang up. I was lucky. We had our own phone line. Me and my sister shared it. And I got to talk most of the time because she didn't really like people like that. But that was our life. And if you wanted to hang out with somebody, you actually went out. So we did go to the movies like every week. Does your generation do this?
Go out, yeah.
To the movies and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. that was one of our things. We go to the movies every week. We started watching The Cosby Show in, I think, 1982. But before the other shows were on, that was just our show. Good Times was on TV when we were kids, and we watched that show. And everyone was really invested in the characters. And the shows were built around our being invested in the characters. There were no websites because nobody had a computer. So what was the point of that? There were no gaming systems. Zero. My neighbor down the street had an Atari, and we could play Pong. So we would have Pong tournaments. But I was horrible and just didn't care. So they got good at it, and I didn't. And didn't feel like I missed anything. One generation later, my son, I think he was 13 or 14 when he got his first Sega. So he had the Sega system, which made him popular in the neighborhood because not everybody had one then. So they had their Sega, which meant they watched less TV. TV was still important, but it was less important then for my son's generation than it had been for my generation. My daughter, 6 years younger than him, we lived in the country. When she was in elementary, it was like the country. So we actually had 10 acres, and our neighbor, our closest neighbor, was a farm. Right across the street, they had this big farm, and the farmer was really nice. He would come, and he would cut the alfalfa hay in our yard to feed it to his cows. So we got a cut yard, he got free alfalfa hay. It was a really good relationship. Because we lived out in the country, there was no cable. We moved from the city where we had cable to the country where there was no cable. So we got a satellite dish. Satellite dish didn't work. So there was no TV. We had a VHS and a bunch of tapes. And the kids could watch the VHS and the tapes, but most of the time we spent outside. So they had like a dirt bike, they had a basketball hoop, they had a little area they could play tennis, a little golf thing, all in the yard, little soccer things. So they didn't feel like they were missing anything, except their friends would talk about these TV shows that they were watching. So eventually we had to work really hard to get them the satellite dish so they could see cable. The cable company wanted to charge $2,000 to install it. And I was like, nah. Number one, we ain't got that kind of bread. And number two, we are not paying that kind of money for TV. Particularly since I worked for the cable company. So y'all can't do me for free? No, they couldn't, and they wouldn't. Not a big deal. Everything worked out. Later on, everybody gets DirecTV. It's almost a self-install, and you could have done that back then, but it's just a little bit harder. Television has always been like the one key factor that created this shared body of knowledge. We had the Cosby Show, we had Cheers, we had Night Court, we had shows like that which meant something to us, Golden Girls, and it sort of gave us this world view. So if you want to know how old people lived, you watch Golden Girls, and we could talk about that. Now, I don't know if it was real because I didn't have any old people in my family living like that, but it seemed plausible. Cheers, about a Boston bar. You want to know how people hang out in Boston? You watch Cheers. Now, I'm pretty sure it was not real, but it was still, for us, an entertaining facsimile of what could have been real. You want to see what a black family lives like in New York? The Cosby Show, the Huxtables, they are the black family. And lots of people were watching that show. On average, we would spend between 6-7 hours engaged in television, or television was on. And not everybody even had a VHS, a video recorder. So you had to watch the show live and then report back to your friends. You couldn't like DVR it. I mean, all this technology that the current generation has did not exist. So it meant that we had a more structured or rigidly structured life. Fortunately, my kids played a lot of sports. So they were never home at nighttime to watch the TV that they couldn't get because we didn't have cable or a satellite dish.
Yeah, you just have to like
Oh yeah, no, that never happened. I mean, it just never happened. And then I don't even remember which year this was. It's probably right around 2000. So right around 2000, they had DVD players that came out. And because I was really late to buy the CD player, I was early to buy the DVD player. So I really wanted that thing to make sure I was not out of the loop, but DVD recorders had not yet come out. So I wasn't able to program the TV to record to my DVD yet. I still had to program the TV to record to my VHS and then watch the tape later on. So I would know what was going on with everybody else's world. We also had the kind of lifestyle in Western Michigan where there was not a whole lot going on anyway. So you might as well watch TV. It's not like DC where you can say, oh, I'm going to go to the Smithsonian today. There's no Smithsonian in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But you can't say, I'm going to go to the opera today. They had operas, but it was like once in a while. It was not regularly. Here, there's an opera season. There's like one opera in West Michigan that I knew about. You could always go to plays, community theater, but it was community theater. It wasn't like DC Shakespeare Theater. So it was just a different type of environment. So TV was much more important to us. And I don't live there anymore, so I don't know if it still holds the value that it held back then. But if I look at the television programming is programmed to a Midwestern audience, not an East Coast audience.
Yeah.
Because the East Coast lifestyle is such that fewer and fewer people are watching TV here, and more people are watching TV and even listening to radio there. Can you tell me when Netflix was first discovered or first launched?
I think it was 2000. It was in the 2000s. I think I want to say 2008.
1997. August 29th, 1997. But clearly, as you know, Netflix was not originally the way it is. It was a DVD delivery service.
You get the DVD, you rent it for like a couple days, and you send
Yep.
it back.
You could have it as long as you wanted to, up to 30 days, but then you got to send it back. The foundation or the founded date for YouTube was 2005.
Yeah.
So it really is only 15 years old with the huge impact that it has. And I couldn't even tell you what year Google bought it, but it wasn't much longer after that, maybe 2007, 2008. So when I compare the way that I consumed television back in the 90s, I was never a subscriber to Netflix until a long time after they were created. Because we actually had like Blockbuster Video and competing video services where you could just go and rent a video. If you want to binge watch The Wire, you just go get all the episodes of The Wire from the video store and pay them a couple dollars for the benefit. Redbox came out much later, and then Netflix started the streaming service. Netflix started a streaming service. Amazon started a streaming service. I'm trying to think of the history here. And I don't think YouTube was next. I think maybe Hulu was next. But you know what? I've got this computer right in front of me, and what I should do is look it up. According to Vader News, in 2006, Amazon introduced video on demand with Amazon Video, and Hulu was founded. 2007, Netflix started launching their streaming service, and then 2012, Netflix began doing original programming. 2012-13, Amazon had their first show. 2013, streaming services are recognized by the Emmys, and then 14 by the Oscars. And now everybody has a streaming service. And part of it is, it makes sense because Netflix was so profitable with their streaming service. Amazon was so profitable with their streaming service, and all the major networks were giving them their programming, or not giving, but selling them their programming, and losing viewers as a result because of the way that Netflix has recreated the television viewing experience. Back in the day, Tuesday nights, that's when I watched my show. Whatever was going on, 9 o'clock Tuesday night, I got to be in front of the TV with my popcorn and my woman, or my man, I don't want to judge. So my partner and my popcorn, TV, 9 o'clock, that's how my life had to be set up. With DVR, with streaming services, with binge watching, that's no longer necessary. You can actually say, 9 doesn't work for me tonight, I'll catch you at 9:15, 9:20. I'll catch you on Wednesday and catch up on that show. The only programming on TV that we can't do that with is sports. Yeah. And that's because of the interconnectivity of television and internet. How did Michigan do? Oh, I'm sorry, not Michigan. How did Maryland do?
They lost by like 11.
That's not bad.
Yeah. It was a big day. It was like game day was there. And like everybody was like, all the students came, like most of the students came.
Yeah.
It was a pretty crazy Saturday.
Yeah. Did y'all do all right?
Oh yeah. We made like record sales at Xfinity Center.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And there will be more games. People talked about Maryland joining the Big Ten, and I actually talked to a faculty member who works in sports, and he was saying that the only reason they're doing it is for the money. And they're abusing Rutgers, and they're abusing Maryland, and those teams just aren't ready for the Big Ten. And we had a battle because I always thought Maryland was ready for basketball. The women's basketball dominates.
Yeah.
Maybe not football quite yet, but the basketball season is just a little bit longer, and you have women's and men's, so there's much more exposure, especially for national television. And with teams like Michigan State and like Purdue and like Maryland within the Big Ten, you're going to get television contracts.
Yeah.
So Maryland brought money to the Big Ten, but also brought fans that we wouldn't have had otherwise. Rutgers, I don't know. So who's Maryland's rival? Because it used to be, y'all thought it was Duke. Duke never thought y'all were a rival.
Yeah, Duke was never Duke. Well, Maryland beat Duke, and then when it joined the Big Ten, it's Ohio State and Penn State. I don't know why, but I know Penn State. We just hate Penn State.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would have thought it would be Rutgers because you both came in at the same time.
No, yeah, it's just Penn State because like whenever we play Penn State, it's just like a big thing. It's a big deal, and like people do not like them.
Okay, is the rivalry as big as the Michigan Ohio State rivalry?
No. It's just like we're like the little brother that just wants to beat up on big brother.
Oh, okay. So, did y'all beat Ohio State this year?
In football or basketball?
Basketball.
Yeah,
No, we know they didn't beat them in football.
We beat them in basketball at Ohio State like a month ago.
Okay. It just came up right there. Ooh. So back in January, yes. But not in February. Okay. So you beat them at Ohio.
Or no, we beat them in Maryland.
You beat them here.
Yeah.
And then they whooped y'all
at Ohio State.
at Ohio. Okay.
And then same thing with Michigan State. We beat them at Michigan State.
Okay. Yeah. But you beat Michigan both games.
No, we haven't played. We only played Michigan once, and that's next week, Sunday.
I'm going. Oh, that's this week Sunday.
Or yeah, the 12th.
I can't go, but I will be watching. We need a win, and I'm guessing we're not going to get it against Maryland. And the one thing that that sports does for us is it gives us this local shared body of knowledge. So if you went to Maryland, you are a Maryland fan, period. Few people, it didn't stick, but you know, for the most part, Maryland should be your school, they should be your team. If you went to Michigan, either in person or with your cash, with my kids, then Michigan will be my team. Until everyone is dead, Michigan is my team. And that gives us that shared experience. And we know that there are certain rules. I was having brunch in Rockville yesterday. And I noticed there was a guy who had on a Michigan shirt. And as I'm sitting down to my brunch, he starts to walk by and say, "Excuse me, sir." And he like glowers down at me for a minute. And then I say, "Go blue." He had the biggest sheet-eating grin on his face because of that connection with the University of Michigan. And the same thing happens with Maryland. And what we're able to do is the television networks are able to sell so much advertising because of those rivalries that they give a bunch of money to the schools, and mostly for scholarships and to keep the arenas looking good and serving well. Millions of dollars, millions upon millions of dollars every year. Have you been to a Maryland football game?
Yeah.
Do you have to work the football games too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are those as insane as the basketball?
Yeah. Well, at
Really?
least for like the big teams like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. It was
Okay.
like last season or like this year, there was a Friday night Penn State game. They shut down the campus all day. Like they literally, all the teachers emailed everybody. They're like, classes are canceled. If you want to come in, talk, come in, email me. And then they're like, other than that, the whole campus was just nothing but Penn State fans just walking around, just like seeing everything on campus.
Yeah.
And then Friday night game, they had to put extra bleachers behind the student section to fill the student section. And it was like the most packed it's ever been for a student section that they had to put extra bleachers in. We stocked every stand with like 10 times more beer than usual, made way more food than usual, and then again we made record sales, and it was like the whole night was crazy, even though we didn't score a single touchdown.
But does that really even matter?
Yeah, and then just people all night just screaming, "We are Penn State, we are Penn State."
I can see how Penn State is a rival now.
Yeah, like, and it's the same thing with Ohio State. When they come here, they're like, "OH," and then the other side says "IO," and then it's just all night of that, and then I think that's what makes people mad. So
Yeah, I can see that.